Hello, everyone. I welcome you all to another podcast. I have a very special guest here with me again. Emily, how are you, Emily?
Hi, I'm good, thanks, Mohammed. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I love what you're doing.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate your time that you took. And so, audience has invited Emily to talk about a very special topic that's empathy and emotional resilience. But before that, let's just hear who is Emily. So, Emily, up to you. Introduce yourself kindly.
Sure. Hi. So I'm Emily, as Mohammed said, and I'm a life coach. Have been doing that for kind of just over a year now, along my full time work, and I've recently decided to specialize in coaching empaths, which I know we'll come on to. I myself am an empath, and yeah, I'm really kind of excited to be going down this path.
Okay, awesome. So I look forward. I look forward to learning a lot about this very special topic. So let you mentioned your life coach. What's your take basically on coaching?
Sure. So I find coaching has got so many definitions, and it's quite hard to describe without experiencing it, but I'll try my best. So coaching for me is all about raising someone's self awareness, right? So that doesn't really sound like much, but it's actually so important because as people, we really need to understand our own thought patterns, which lead to certain behaviors. Because if left unchecked, we could be thinking really limiting thoughts about ourselves and our abilities, which means that you might be thinking, oh, I can't do that, I won't do that. But if you don't know you're thinking those thoughts, then you will act in line with those and then potentially hold yourself back from doing loads of amazing things. So what a coach does is really comes in and challenges those. So we'll work out, what do you really want? What's really bothering you? And potentially what is going on in your brain that's actually stopping you from reaching that in the moment. And then working on, a positive future focused action plan to actually get you to where you want to be. So that's my
Awesome.
little take on it.
Oh, perfect. So if I have to give it a one-liner, so it goes like, a person who considers oneself being unresourceful, a coach basically jumps in and helps him or her think that he or she is resourceful.
Yeah, that's a really nice way of putting it, definitely.
Okay. So first here's our topic. Let's start with empathy. And what do you think? What is actually empathy?
Sure. So the way I like to describe empathy is like a superpower, but one that can also go a bit wrong or become a too much. So empathy is really being able to not just understand other people, but actually feel what they are feeling. And this can also extend to kind of a global scale. So I'll come on to that in a second. But when it's person to person, as a coach, obviously that's great because I can sense what's going on with my client, how they feel. But the danger, though, is that then you can take that on too much, which I'll discuss a bit later. And, because you don't want to be with a friend that's sad and actually feel sad. You kind of want to manage that, understand it without carrying that burden with you. And I think a really good sort of global reference is the recent pandemic.
Yeah.
No, not at any other time has the whole world been going through the same thing. So as an empath, it's quite easy to get sucked into that and be sort of brought down and almost carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. So that's it. I see it as something, as I say, a superpower, but also something that, if not really well managed, can definitely prove a bit difficult.
Yeah, agreed. So I guess there are many researchers, that actually have found that how much with respect to actually leadership, it was found that being a good leader, you have to be an empath. And
Hmm.
from professional point of view, there were many researchers that actually found that the people who are not just boss, and they are empathetic, so they become more of a boss, and they become more of a leader rather than a boss. So
Exactly.
it shows that in itself empathy is actually very very great. But do you think, as you mentioned, and if it can't be catered right, so it can have dangerous impact as well. So do you think is it draining and bad in itself as well, the empathy?
I think it can be if it's not managed. It's quite easy as an empath to take on other people's problems, and to take on their emotions. And I think to be helpful as a coach or even as a friend, you need to almost be able to stop at the kind of understanding level before you actually take on their burden. So, say an empath had a loved one who was going through something, say, traumatic or horrible. Of course, you want to be there for them, but then if you take on their emotion, then you almost can't be strong for them. So I actually like that you said that about leaders, because I think typically empaths can be seen as being a bit weak. I think it's only recently that actually people realize you need empathy to be a leader, and it's not weakness if you use it in the right way.
Agreed. I guess there is a bit slight difference of empathy with some sympathy,
Yes.
and that's where that emotional burden and emotional taking on those emotions, that's where it comes in. That
Mm-hmm.
being if you're sympathetic, that's where the real game of emotions comes in. So if I'm sympathetic towards any issue, so I'll be taking on those emotions on my own emotional being. But if I'm empathetic, that's where the difference comes in. That I'll be I'll be aware about the other person's emotions, but I won't be crossing that fine line of empathy with respect to sympathy.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, okay, so it's a bit good intro about empathy. Let's just talk about emotional resilience. What
Mm-hmm.
do you think? What it is?
Yes, absolutely. So I think the actual dictionary definition is around the ability to bounce back after a kind of you experience a negative emotion. I think it goes actually maybe beyond that and not letting, say, small events throughout the day even really bother you in the first place. So it's a kind of, I guess, extension of that. So to delve into the first, I mean, of course, everyone's going to go through sad and horrible times. I'm not saying that you shouldn't feel emotion. I think it's just the understanding that emotions are temporary and you don't have to get really kind of locked into it, right? It's almost like you can experience those emotions and let it go. I guess a way to present this is, say, at work, okay, you can really notice the difference between someone who's emotionally resilient and emotionally reactive. So the emotionally reactive person will be the stressed out manager who is shouting at the people that report into them and blaming everyone else for what's going on. I've had that myself. and and the emotionally resilient person will be the one where the same sort of bad stuff can happen, but they'll just be able to deal with it in a much calmer way. It won't then ruin their day and they won't then go and act irrationally because of it. So you can really see it, and I'm sure we all know both those types of people in our lives.
Agreed. So you mentioned the profession example. Well, how well and when other kids or phases of life do you think how much important this emotional resilience is?
I think it's really important. I think, again, similarly with the balance of empathy, to be a leader, you can't get stressed about the small things, because that will really, I think that really emanates especially around, say, in an office environment. If you have a leader who walks around being stressed and rude and can't deal with those bad situations, that affects everybody. You really need to be able to manage your emotional state to be a good leader.
Yeah. And I believe that that's where the, from emotion, that there is a negative energy things come in, whether you got positive energy or you got negative energy. And if a person is, emotionally reactive, and that's where, the negative energy just jumps in. So, a boss can get the things done by shouting on the subordinates. That actually brings in a lot of, negative energy and negative emotions ultimately. And that brings in retaliation mainly, to be honest.
Yes, exactly.
And on the other hand, actually, if a person, like, so keeping it, sticking to the profession example, if we keep it a person who if the first negative thing comes in, or a situation comes in, the person who is basically emotionally resilient, he'll be, taking things and absorbing the situation, thinking of the other angles that can be, result in, rather than being, shouting on the things and, panicking about the situation. So if a boss is resilient, he'll think of multiple cases and he'll be, discussing it. So rather than miscommunication, there will be a lot more communication, and there will be some urgent meeting called, and there'll be like all the team members, they'll discuss it, that hey, this is a situation, and we gotta cope up with this and that. And that actually helps that, everybody is sitting together and they're trying to find a solution. And that's where actually, a good leader and a good teamwork comes in.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And just thinking as well that I know that our creative brains work best when we're not stressed. So if you have that emotionally resilient type, they'll be able to probably much easier think of creative solutions in response to that stressful stimulus than the person who is emotionally reactive, who'll just be like, and not thinking straight, not using their brain properly. So yeah, there's loads of benefits.
Yeah, exactly. And if you keep, keep the same case for personal life, that's what happens in family, mainly, or in relationships. Exactly the same thing. So if my partner is basically if I have some issues with my partner, and if I'm not emotionally resilient, definitely it's gonna retaliation that's gonna be.
Yes.
And on the other hand, if it's that much level of emotional awareness that no matter what happens, you gotta discuss it with your partner, and you come up with a solution. And same goes with family. If you got a child, and there is some issue with them, and if you're not highly emotionally resilient, so definitely you're not gonna understand the issue of your child, or if there's a teenager in your family. So that's how important it is, no matter either it's the personal life or professional life. Okay, so
you're absolutely right.
So coming to the point of, how do you think a person can develop emotional resilience?
Yeah, sure. So I thought of 5 steps that definitely work for me and hopefully work for other people. So if I just take you through those, the first one is understanding. So often when we have quite a strong emotional response to something, it's not really about that point in time. It's normally because we've kind of built up some kind of negativity around a certain situation, or even something from when we are small. So an example, I'll use a personal example. At my job now, which I love, at the start, I did find myself getting stressed about really small things, worried that I'd done something wrong, even though the actual situation I hadn't, there was nothing wrong. And I realized it's because I was carrying that stress over from previous jobs where I'd been told off and told I was doing something wrong constantly, basically, bad management, telling me I was wrong when I wasn't, that kind of thing. So I realized that in that moment that actually my initial response of stress was nothing to do with this. It's because I was still carrying this thing with me from before. So I think if you, next time you have quite a strong response, have a bit of a look at that and think, okay, where does this really come from? Because that can actually then help you to sort of understand what's going on and then to ultimately change it. So the first one is kind of understanding yourself. I'll continue, but do feel free to interrupt with any questions or comments as I go.
Sure.
The second one is perspective. So you might have heard of the 10-10-10 rule. So when it comes, right. So when it comes to a situation, you think, okay, will this bother me in 10 days, 10 months, 10 years? Especially say if at work, or as you say, a little argument with your partner or something. And often it's probably never in the 10 months, 10 years. Often it's not even in the 10-day category. So just having that perspective and realizing, okay, this is not worth this much stress or sadness or kind of whatever you're carrying, I think is helpful. So the third, I call it, it's not you, it's them. So I think a lot about emotional reactivity comes from sort of altercations with other people. And what I've generally realized is that if someone, especially someone you usually get on with, suddenly maybe comes at you and is quite angry, or we'd say snappy, or just a bit rude, we always think, oh no, what have I done wrong? And then we'll get stressed about it. But actually, they've probably just had a bad day and they're just taking it out on you. So rather than you also getting stressed and then probably acting strangely back to them, just have a moment and realize that it's probably nothing to do with you. So that will help as well.
Yeah.
My fourth and fifth are quite similar. So the fourth is mindfulness. So just a general awareness of when you're feeling a certain emotion, what you're actually thinking about, because the thoughts that we think are so strong and important. So for example, maybe if you're stressed at work, I'll stay with the work example, you're thinking, oh, I always do things wrong, right? So if you realize you're thinking that, you'll think, oh, actually, I'm catastrophizing, and oh, actually, that's not true. But that thought could be causing your stressful response. So helpful to just have an awareness of what's going through your brain at that time, which links to my last step, which is actually choosing your thoughts. So instead of choosing of these thoughts, which is, oh, I always do things wrong, you can actively choose a better thought, which is, oh, I will find a solution to this, or I'll do better next time. Can you see how they'd cause completely different emotional reactions? So we can actually prepare our brain to be able to just kind of dissipate this negative energy much more quickly and take more positive action, whether that's at work or, any aspect of life. So that's my 5 steps.
Okay, awesome. That's actually pretty much, your perspective. And, I actually noted down all of these. From understanding perspective, it's not you, it's them, mindfulness, and changing your thoughts. And that's actually, here's my perspective a bit on that. So I start with observation first. For me, it's more about observation. And so it's like, the difference, what happens usually is we usually rush. We rush to create a judgment out of something. And that's where the issue comes in. And rather than, keep passing a judgment or, rushing for, getting some, meaning out of the wrong situation, if we observe and, we being at peace, if you observe some different scenarios, that what might, the situation can be depicting to me, or what other meanings can I get from the situation. And definitely with that observation and peace of mind, definitely, we won't be reactive, rather than we will be emotionally resilient for sure. And with respect to your part of mindfulness and all, I believe that's where the senses comes in. So I believe if I can, think of more about what actually the situation is, presenting to me, and if I involve my like positive jargons to that, because what you said about, if I'm uh, uh, consciously reminding myself that, I'm bad at doing this thing. So it means when I've said it out loud, so my unconscious has read it that I am not good at this thing. So mainly
Yeah.
I'm bad at this thing.
Yeah.
And again, so whenever I'm gonna do that thing, my unconscious is, behind the lines, and it's continuously triggering me that, hey, you're doing this, but you're bad at this thing. And unconscious is so powerful that ultimately when it keeps on triggering that, ultimately my conscious efforts, that will definitely have almost, negative or bad results for sure.
Yes,
So that's where,
absolutely.
the mindfulness and senses part comes in. The more positive emotions, the more positive jargons, I involve in my, conscious efforts, that's where my unconscious, that will, empower my conscious wordings and my actions to bring the more positive results.
Yes, I love that.
Perfect, perfect.
I made notes as
And
well. Teaching me
sure, sure,
too.
sure. Perfect. And so, and with respect to the point you mentioned about, it's you, it's not you, it's them. I believe when you're you being observant, there was one line actually once I wrote. So it goes like, their words are useless once you know where they're coming from.
I like it.
Oh, thanks. So for me, again, the way you mentioned it, that if a person, if he or she is having bad day and he is, coming to you and shouting, so you actually, if being calm, if you analyze the situation, and being observant, if you just found out that, hey, maybe that guy is having a bad day.
Yeah.
So and if you are smart enough and you are emotionally resilient and you don't want your day to be bad, so you'll analyze the situation and you'll be like, I know these are these words, but I also know that these words are coming from a person who's having a bad day. So
Exactly.
you're so much socially aware that you're gonna ruin your day because you are self-aware.
Yes, exactly.
That's
Yeah.
where so of course, when we are talking about empathy, that's where we're talking about the one of the four parts of emotional intelligence. So that's where I connect empathy with self-awareness. Since
Absolutely.
I'm an empath, so I believe before empathy there comes my personal awareness, my self-awareness. So
Yeah.
if the other person is having a bad day, no, I'm not giving
Yeah.
me myself a bad day.
You keep it.
Man, that's good for you. Actually, it's not, but no, I'm
Yeah,
not
I
gonna
didn't
take
want
it.
it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
I actually found it, that empathy, when it's connected with emotional resilience, for sure, because you're aware about the other person, and and you're talking about other person's emotions, and you're aware about other person's emotions, so definitely you analyze the things and you become resilient on that. And that actually helps again first in the personal life, first to the person self, then in the personal life, and ultimately in the professional life as well.
Exactly.
Oh,
Imperative.
perfect. And if you want to summarize it, definitely I look forward to have some final words from you on this.
Yeah, sure. No. Yeah, so overall, I think, as I say, empathy, it's an amazing thing to have naturally. I mean, it can also be taught. I believe that as humans, we are all very much connected. We have the powerful intuition to understand how others are feeling. I think that can get maybe a bit lost in the workplace and in our personal relationships too. So it's good to hone in on that, but also at the same time to build up this emotional resilience, because we can't go through life kind of being stressed and upset and everything. You know, we've all got things to do, and I really do believe in the potential of every single person. I think if we get out of our own way a bit more, build our emotional resilience, work out what's going on in our brain, and make generally things a bit more positive, then we can really all do anything and make a really positive impact in this world.
Perfect. That's very, perfect summary. And thank you so much for your time, Emily.
Thank you
It was
so much.
a pretty much thoughtful session, and for me, it was a great learning. And I again appreciate your time and efforts. So, till the next podcast, listeners, I believe that's it for today. And I say you all are very good. Bye bye.
Great. Thank you. Bye.